So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Amina Toller, and I'm the 4th Ward Counselor here in the Township of Montclair. I also serve on the Economic Development Committee, along with the Deputy Mayor, Susan Shin Anderson, and our third member will be announced hopefully in the next few weeks. The presentation you will hear tonight was presented to the public at our Town Council meeting. While we realized this was not ample time for all residents to learn, I actually requested another presentation be prepared for the community, so we're here this evening. The aim of this presentation on the Lackawanna Plaza financials is to provide residents with another chance to hear from residents, hear your insights, as well as to allow the community to pose questions to us. We value your input and will carefully consider all of your feedback. We kindly ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation. Just a side note, if you parked in the deck, please see myself or Deputy Shin Anderson. We have parking passes for you to safely exit for free the deck there. And without further ado, I will welcome our EDC Chair, Deputy Mayor Susan Shin Anderson.
Thank you, Councilor Toller. Before I get into the next part, I just want to do some quick housekeeping. In addition to the parking passes, please make sure you get one prior to your leaving, so you don't have to pay for parking. If anyone needs to use the restroom, you can just go out the door, the back door in the rear of this room, and walk down the hall, and it's to your right, the ladies and men's. Okay, so as Councilor Toller said, we did want to have an additional opportunity for, and this, by the way, this is going to be recorded for the many people who couldn't make it tonight. This is an additional opportunity to provide information and have questions answered. We also took some of the questions that were brought to us at the first presentation on the 27th, and we've added to this and compiled an FAQ, a question and answer to comment, the questions that were asked, and we're going to make that document available. We have printouts here, and we're going to also post the FAQ to our website, on the Township's website. Okay, so I thought it would be helpful, since this is for the benefit of the entire public, not just for the people in this room, and those of you who might be more familiar with this project, to sort of provide an overview of the history of this site. The history of this site and the project. So I think many of us know this project, and it's sort of like from the time the Pathmark closed, right, in 2015. That's the grocery store that I used to walk to. That's the grocery store that was walkable to many people in the neighborhood. But this site and work on it actually dates way back to 1980, when this site was designated as an area in need of redevelopment. At that time, the Township Council adopted an urban renewal plan to transform the historic train terminal that's there into a shopping mall. A redevelopment plan was adopted, and this property was redeveloped that included the Pathmark. Fast forward to 2002, the Township Council redesignated the area because of quote-unquote continuing negative conditions. But after that, there was no significant action taken until 2014-2015, when the Town Council then redesignated this area based on the recommendations of the Planning Board. That's when this current redevelopment process actually began. As you know, this is about 8 acres, taking up these lots. And then Pathmark closed in November of 2015 after the redesignation. And for a couple of years, there was no redevelopment plan. Until 2017, when the Township Council then drafted a redevelopment plan. It was submitted to the Planning Board, the version dated June 1st. That's a typo, it's 2017, sorry about that, for review. And then that same year, the Planning Board issued a report in which they set out 19 recommendations, including some recommendations that included reduction of density, the number of units, of residential units, requiring greater setbacks and step-backs. They wanted the redevelopment plan to specify the size of the supermarket, require affordable and workforce housing, and identify and provide greater integration of historic elements, among other things. In August of that year, the revised redevelopment plan, which is now known as the revised 2017 redevelopment plan, was produced by the township. But the owner at the time decided not to pursue that project under the revised 2017 redevelopment plan, and instead filed a site plan application based on the prevailing zoning. Their site plan was to develop a mixed-use project with residential apartments, supermarket, and other commercial developments. In 2019, February of 2019, the former property owner site plan was approved by the planning board. And then after that, that planning board site plan approval was challenged in litigation, including by the owner of the adjacent property at 1 Greenwood. The property owner also intervened as a party defendant. However, that site plan approval was upheld by the trial court. And then comes the change in ownership in 2021. The current owner acquired this property in 2021. They successfully defended the 2019 Planning Board site plan approval, and then went on to see how the property could be redeveloped, more or less consistent with the principles of the revised 2017 redevelopment plan. And then, throughout this process, there have been, and so I'm sort of setting all of this out to illustrate how, throughout this whole chain of events, this is a very iterative process. There were public meetings, opportunities for public input, and then further revisions were made as a result to the revised plan in October of 2022. In December of 2022, the council introduced an ordinance to approve the October version, 2022 version of the redevelopment plan. And then in 2023, the planning board reviewed that plan and issued a report to the town council with additional recommendations to the October 2022 plan. And then in August of that year, excuse me? Sorry?
Didn't the planning board twice vote that the plan was not in keeping with the master plan? That doesn't seem to be mentioned here.
I apologize if there is stuff that is not. This is all sort of further illustrated in the financial agreement, so in the interest of time, I tried to just sort of highlight the key things. So I do note that, I did note that. Sorry, and I don't know if everybody could hear what you said, so you can come up later and repeat it. Going to September of 2023, the planning board reviewed the August version of the redevelopment plan and provided its report to the town council, recommended further changes. But the prior township council adopted the August 2023 plan in October of that year. Finally, in May of 2024, just prior to this current council taking office, the prior town council introduced a new ordinance approving the August 2023 version of the redevelopment plan. And this was done to address a conflict of interest issue that was raised involving a former member of the prior council. And then in September of 2024, this council designated the current owner, VTP Holdings, as a redeveloper for the approved redevelopment plan under a resolution and based on a description that was provided of the redevelopment team. And throughout 2025, following that, the council, through its Economic Development Committee and Finance Committee, has been working through a redevelopment agreement and financial agreement with the full council's input. And that work basically went on through all of last year. And that is where we are. I'd like to now turn it over, and we want to leave plenty of time for discussion and questions and answers, but we are now going to move over to a presentation by our financial consultant, Michael Handley.
Before we get started, just one quick, I don't know, did everyone get an agenda? If you need one, they're up here. If anyone wants to take notes, I have index cards and pencils if you didn't bring paper. So you're welcome to pass this around, take notes if you need it. Anyone? No? Okay. The agenda's in here if you need it. Well, not the agenda, the overview. But if you want to take notes, I have some index cards and pencils here for you.
By the way, immediately following this meeting at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 9, there is there's a workshop, the second workshop hosted by the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee in the same room. So just so you know.
Thank you. In light of our time limits, I'm going to start. I'm Janice Talley. I am the Director of Planning and Community Development for Montclair Township, and I've been involved with this. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background information. Thank you, Susan, for providing the very long history on how we got here today. I'm just going to focus on the redevelopment agreement, just so that we're all familiar with what is part of this project that's providing the basis for the financial agreement. And the bulk of this meeting is discussing the financial agreement. The redevelopment agreement reflects and implements what's in our adopted redevelopment plan. What is that? Well, you can see this is the regulating plan, the concept plan that's part of our adopted redevelopment plan. It includes up to 300 dwelling units on the property, including 60 affordable units and 30 workforce housing units. The plan states a minimum of 135,000 square feet of non-residential gross floor area. A minimum of 75,000 square feet will be office space, and between 30,000 and 50,000 square feet of that area must be a supermarket. Wrong way. The redevelopment agreement also includes a phasing plan, a time frame for implementing the improvements. That's one of the requirements of a redevelopment agreement. As you can see here, it's broken down into phases. Phase 1A and 1B are on the west side. Phases 2A and 2B are on the east side of the 8-acre site. And phase 3 is the office building on the west side, which is shown in red on this slide. It also includes a timetable for completing the improvements. Very important that we're not a construction zone, that this is not a construction zone for an extended period of time. It's a large site. So the construction timetable requires that the redevelopment improvements be made within 8 years. That is maybe changed if there's extended litigation, but without litigation, it does need to be included or completed within 8 years. It also identifies the public benefits, which we've discussed before, but it's very important and integral to this property. Again, we have the affordable housing, which is 60 units. That's our 20% set aside, which we require of all development, also applies to this. But above that, we also require that 10% of the units be set aside and regulated as workforce housing. We have requirements in the redevelopment plan and in the redevelopment agreement to ensure that those units are properly administered, I should say, and subsidized by the developer. It requires the developer to provide a supermarket. It requires a significant amount of preservation of historic resources that were identified for the property. It requires development meaning construction of a bike lane along Glen Ridge Avenue that would extend this component of the Glen Ridge Avenue bike lane, which would connect to the Essex Hudson Greenway. Requires construction of a bus shelter on Bloomfield Avenue and enhanced architectural design. And I see we have Mr. Smith here, who was very integral in creating those architectural design standards. It also includes a significant amount of open space. Over 20% of the property is required to be preserved for public open space. Those open space areas are in I forgot to change the slide, are in 4 succinct areas. 3 of them are fairly large public plazas. One is the main plaza. That's a 35,000 square feet plaza that will front the historic waiting room and where the train station was, and Bloomfield Avenue. That will be a plaza. There's Station Plaza, which is where the tracks cross into the station and go under Grove Street. That's a 15,000 square foot area, and then a linear arts plaza, which is on the east side and fronts the building and is located between the building on the east side of the project and Grove Street. We also included additional requirements in the redevelopment agreement that the developer shall ensure that the main plaza is available to the township for 10 free planned public events annually, and provides a publicly accessible bathroom to anybody who uses those plazas. So I'm now going to hand it over to our financial consultant, who will get into this is Michael Hanley with NW Financial, and he will get into the details of the financial agreement.
How you doing? My name is Mike Hanley. I'm with NW Financial. Janice, is up or down, forward?
Down.
Down is forward.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All the things that were just described to you, all as it relates to process and to the benefits and the type of development you're receiving, are why you would participate in the redevelopment process. What that does is it gives you tools, and I'm using you collectively, the governing body, the planning board, the public, to participate and get a type of development that you want in a project and a site that's being underutilized. And those tools are related to having control over what gets built, what kind of public benefits are received, and the financial discretion inside of that to make the project you want happen. And those things can be cleaning up dirty sites, taking sites that are very expensive to build on because they have challenges not unlike this one, historical sites, adaptive reuse. They give you the ability to create open space, to get more affordable housing. And you collectively negotiate those things. And one piece of that negotiation, one tool in that, is to provide a financial agreement, because by definition in this site you've determined that there's a reason it hasn't been developed in a way that you are happy with. There's a reason that you want to encourage certain types of development over other types of development. And a pilot is one of those tools. And what the pilot does is it allows a payment stream that is not conventional taxes, and it is less than conventional taxes in every case. That's why it exists. It also makes you a partner in the transaction. So you are being paid based on the success of that development. You share in the revenue stream. To the extent it goes up, you are more successful. And to the extent it goes down, you are less successful. And you are doing that if you think those other benefits are valuable. We covered most of those things in the original and what I just said. So why would you ever want to do this, right? providing any kind of a benefit to a developer who, by being here, and we'll talk about later, is about to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into this site. Why would a person capable of hundreds of millions of dollars require any assistance from a taxpayer, from a governing body? And I've stood in front of dozens of governing bodies around the state, and I promise you 100% of them would prefer never to provide this kind of assistance. But it's for all the reasons we discussed earlier. You are making a trade to get the type of development you want on a site that you think is underperforming and make that project feasible. If the benefit is not necessary, no governing body would ever vote for it, no public would support it. But it is the desire of delivering the type of development the community, in the form of the groups we discussed, want to move forward, and sometimes that requires taking this step. And this step does two things: provide certainty as it relates to how payments are going to be made. It's not subject to the ups and downs of tax assessments, and fighting tax appeals or not, or fighting the spending habits of a governing body or not. I mean, as you all have experienced here, sometimes governments make mistakes, and you're all reckoning with that in the context of your Board of Education. So that type of certainty is important in financing and can impact feasibility of a project. Misconceptions about pilots. There are many people that believe pilots mean a developer is not paying anything. That is incorrect. The developer is paying, but they're paying a percentage of their revenue stream. Usually, occasionally, they're paying a percentage of construction costs. In this case, it's a percentage of their revenue stream. So those dollars will be produced, audited, and each year, at the end of the year, within 90 days at the end of that fiscal year, the developer will provide an audit that, by a certified public accountant, that says exactly the amount of revenue that comes in, and they will have to pay based on that revenue stream. And as we discussed earlier, it can go up or down, but you become a partner in that revenue stream. And to the extent it outperforms what is expected today, you are the beneficiary of that. Usually, and in this case it will be true almost certainly, the municipal budget will receive more dollars than it would otherwise receive under conventional taxes. There is a common sense that pilots cause an increase in property taxes for existing residents. That is almost never the case and should not be true. You are taking a site that is producing a small amount of revenue and turning it into more revenue. When a governing body has more revenue, that offsets costs that would otherwise be borne by the existing taxpayer. And the fourth bullet here is that school budgets decrease as a result of entering into these agreements. School budgets are determined by appropriation caps. They spend based on the amount they're allowed to spend and not based on the assessments of a municipality. As an example, municipalities often lose tax appeals. That has no impact on a school board budget. They continue to receive 100% of the bill that they send to a municipality on an annual basis, regardless of whether assessments go up or they go down. You know, this is a little repetitive, but these are a series of items that could cause a pilot to be necessary in a place where, like Montclair, where you have a very good real estate environment. You get very high rents. You have lots of development going on. But there are cases that can distinguish a site from the balance of sites in a town. And those can be remediation. They can be historical costs. They can be site aggregation. There are lots of reasons why a site can cost more than a neighboring site to develop. And those are reasons you would use the redevelopment tools we're talking about. As it relates to the assumption in a developer's pro forma, you have had a number of people review the assumptions that are in there. You have attorneys, you have myself, you have a cost professional who have looked and studied all the details of the pro formas to determine if they are reasonable. Now, that's not to say that you can't pick apart a line item and find a little discrepancy that you think might be higher or lower. But it is to say that when you look across all the costs and revenue streams, the aggregate assumptions are reasonable and can be relied upon to determine feasibility and whether or not assistance is necessary. Now, this project, if you were at the former presentation or saw it on YouTube or wherever you find these things, has, based on common assumptions, a below average target for returns. And so why would anyone go forward with that? Why would someone want to go forward with a project who, based on normal assumptions, appears to have a return that is below what the marketplace typically expects? And you have a developer here and that believes that this marketplace will outperform, that you have a particular site and a scarce resource that will in fact produce revenues that are above what is expected and therefore is worth investing equity and raising debt that might underperform the marketplace, because their expectation is that it will in fact overperform the marketplace. Timeframes. So you saw in the redevelopment slide earlier an 8-year time frame for development. But the pro forma provided by the developer and the expectation of the developer is that they will perform a significant number of these tasks simultaneously. And the expectation and their goal is to have this project happen more quickly than the timeline that you saw earlier. Those are outside dates that would cause them to have redevelopment agreement defaults. They actually want to perform much more quickly and deliver the project closer to 5 or 6 years than 8 years, because that is in their best interest. All our interests is for this to happen faster. It will be determined by, speed of approvals, litigation, marketplace conditions. But the sooner they complete the project, the sooner they are generating revenue, which is what improves their investment returns. I think we already hit this slide. And we discussed this as well. So net revenues, which we'll go into more detail later in this slide, is largely determined based on what you think incremental costs of the government are. So there is a model that we're going to go through some of the details on that talks about incremental costs and how people evaluate them, and actually Rutgers is a leading place in the modeling of these costs. But I would tell you, I think the experience of most municipalities and governments is that the base cost of running governments is extremely high. And the incremental cost of adding bodies to a municipality is very low. Because the largest costs are public safety, which require you to deliver public safety in a response time. So covering area like this particular project, which is in the middle of your town, has received services for as long as any of us can remember, actually has little or no incremental cost by virtue of continuing to exist. And in fact, sometimes it goes down because a place that is prosperous, secured well, and active can cause less municipal needs than a place that is vacant, abandoned, needs to be constantly tended to by the public safety of the municipality. This is the project cost summary associated with this project. As you can see, it's over $300 million that will be invested in your community. These costs have been tested by Firefighter, who is a firm that is expert in understanding construction costs, and there is no indication that these are inflated costs. They believe that, if anything, the costs are low, they're not high. You can see there are a significant number of costs that are associated with the requirements the municipality put on this developer to cause the site to be developed in a way that was in the interest of the community. There are costs related to historical improvements, public plazas, infrastructure, etc., that increase the cost of a project compared to a site that doesn't have those needs. This is a description of the returns. These are returns under reasonable assumptions, and the simplest one to understand is the yield on cost. You basically take a look at the revenue stream and divide it by the costs associated with the project. You would like those to be far above the 5% level that's being described here. I mean, this is, it would be customary for a developer to look for 6.5% to 7.5% under conventional assumptions. This is less, and it's a reflection of the developer's positive view of the site and the risk tolerance associated with moving forward with this project. This slide attempts to demonstrate cash flow from the municipal perspective, what we discussed earlier. So if we keep doing what we're doing, the municipality would receive $16.5 million over the term of this pilot. If the project is developed and generates the expected revenue, that $16 million turns into over $100 million. And the township share turns from slightly over $4 to $87 million. Those are dollars that don't have to be raised from today's homeowner. As you've all experienced, costs don't go down from year to year. And revenue if it's not generated from someone new, is generated from you. This is a more detailed description that talks about how pilots are calculated and compares them to conventional taxes. So pilots are based on revenue as described, and you can see AGR is an acronym that means aggregate gross revenue. OAT is otherwise applicable taxes, and it's a two-pronged test that determines how much is paid on the site. It is primarily driven by the gross revenue calculation. And as you can see, there are significant increases throughout the pilot of gross revenue. 10% increase in year 6, another more than 10% increase in year 11. They become the gross pilot payment. Land taxes will continue to be paid. The developer is then entitled to a credit for those land taxes. So that is a deduction from the municipal budget perspective. The county also is entitled to a 5% share of the payment. And then we add back a 2% administrative fee, which is charged to the developer and paid to the town for administering the pilot. That leaves a township share of $87 million in this case. The conventional taxes would be higher. Your assessor and consultant looked at the project and determined what they believe conventional taxes would be in this case. The municipal share of those taxes is about $34 million. So the benefit to the municipal budget of this project is significant. So now we'll move on to the incremental cost conversation. This project is likely to produce about 600 new residents. As I said earlier, I don't believe that's a meaningful number in the context of Montclair, but there is a calculation, a way to look at incremental costs that evaluates what it might cost if that's the way government actually works. So the state of New Jersey puts together a model and identifies what our core budget costs. The core budget costs of Montclair are about $88 million. You then take a percentage of those dollars, and we've presented a range here as to what actually might be incremental in this case. And the per resident cost comes out between $300 and $500 million per new residence, which amounts to between $200 and $300 in new cost. Then we look at public school children. So there are a number of multipliers for public school children. When evaluating this project, we looked at a couple of different Rutgers models to determine how many public school children might turn out. The expectation is it will be between 26 and 31. Your current total budgetary cost is just less than $22,000 per student. The cost of classroom instruction is closer to $12,000 a student. The municipal taxpayer pays about 85% of those costs. So if you were to multiply it by the range, you'd end up between $260,000 and $310,000 of costs associated with those new students. Now, it should be noted, the student population has actually declined over the past few years, and the base cost of running schools, again, is very highly connected to curriculum, to administration, to facilities that exist. So the actual increase of cost associated with students that would have been sitting in the classroom 5 years ago is probably not this high, but this is a way to calculate the impact if you actually thought you were adding students to your school enrollment base. And that's the totals we discussed earlier. So in sum, the project is financially challenged because it's a difficult site, because of the burdens or needs the town wanted to be part of the improvements of the site. And this project will, and the financial agreement, if the governing body votes for it and if the community supports it, will help cause the project to be developed. So I guess we can move to questions.
No one else from your team is presenting, just you?
Yep, just me. And then, we have support for questions.
I think that there's only one microphone.
We
so-
don't have a wireless microphone,
So
so.
maybe if people can line up so that we can get them on camera, if you don't mind lining up. We only have one microphone. You can ask your question and then Mr. Hanley can address it. Please and thank you, bear with us. Just come on up. Whoever the first question is, ask it, pass it to Mr. Hanley.
Do we have an opportunity not only to ask questions, but make suggestions or recommendations?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep. We just need you here in front of the camera. We again apologize, we only have one microphone.
Okay.
Okay? Would you like some water?
See if I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, you hold the mic there. Okay. Hello, my name is William Scott. I'm the chair of the Montclair NAACP Housing Committee. And I have a suggestion and a recommendation to read into the record. This one a little different. The Montclair branch would like to make the following request/recommendation to the mayor and council of the Township of Montclair in the state of New Jersey. We would like to see an amendment to the affordable housing requirements. That recommendation would be that the period of exemption for the municipality rent control ordinance, which is a 30-year exemption. This is a 30-year exemption for new construction of any residential buildings in the state of New Jersey. That exemption allows the developer to be exempt from rent control for a 30-year period of time. What we are recommending from the NAACP, that exemption be waived, that the developer waive that exemption. The reason why we would like to see that exemption waived, because if you go back to the screen where you see the affordable units and also the market rate units, which are 210 units, we want affordable controls, affordability controls in the state, in the Township of Montclair for the next 30 years on the, not only affordable units, but also the market rate units. Because without those controls, the property owner or developer has the capability of raising rents 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future, whatever they would like to do. We have some examples of that already with the Valley and Bloom project that was developed a number of years ago, the two South Willow project that was developed a number of years. So there's no controls on those units that are at a market rate situation in the Township of Montclair. This is something that the township can request in addition to a part of the developer agreement. This is the time to get protection for not only affordable units, but for market rate units moving forward. So we're requesting that that be a part of the agreement, that the township requires the developer waive that waiver and allow these market rate units to fall under the rent control ordinance for the Township of Montclair, which has been in place since 2022. So, and we know that this has been done at a state level because hundreds of thousands of market rate luxury apartments have been developed in the state of New Jersey, and the number of affordable units is grossly uncommitted to. So what we want to do and what we would like to see in Montclair is to set a precedent that we not only want affordable units for the affordable housing units, that being also the workforce housing, but we want to make sure that the market rate units are under rent control because it gives affordability controls moving forward. Thank you. And, excuse me, one other thing, I've conversed with the tenants organization of Montclair. I have Ms. Philidad that's also here. We've collaborated on this, and I think that this is something that we would like to see move forward in the Township of Montclair. Okay?
Thank you.
It's not working?
This is for the recording, so if you could just stand right there and use.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bonnie Fogel. I live in the 3rd Ward. I have a lot of questions. We were told to come here with questions, and it would be good at some point if they can get answered. The first one is I'd like a clarification. We heard BDP mentioned, BDP Holdings. We're also familiar with that. We're familiar with David Plasick. And I see that now the owner's Lackawanna Montclair Urban Renewal LLC, and it's signed by John Williams. Well, I know David Plasick. I don't know John Williams. So I would love to have that clarified. You know, it's kind of amazing to me that we're being asked to subsidize a developer with payment in lieu of taxes. I don't know if Mr. Hanley is very familiar with Montclair. There are people who are well-versed on this, and I have never seen any kind of positive result of the pilots benefiting our township or our Board of Education, our schools, in places like Valley and Bloom and the Sienna. So I'm not quite sure why we would want to do that. You know, I also question, why are we asked to subsidize a developer when we're also being asked to subsidize the Board of Ed's misplacement or whatever they've done with $20 million, and Glen Ridge's subsidy of $20 million, and our desperate need for a new police station and a town hall and library and schools that are falling apart. As far as I'm concerned, a payment in lieu of taxes is a form of subsidizing the development. It's sold to us as something that's going to be so good for our schools, but I have never seen any actual evidence of that. It's also told that it helps our ratables, and I don't think it has. So I am very much not in favor of this pilot system. I think that the smart and responsible action is to not accept a pilot in lieu of taxes and require developers to pay real estate taxes on the square footage that they develop. The other thing, very frankly, because I don't know if I should address this to Mr. Plaza, because I don't know what he owns anymore, but I know that you bought the Mills building, and there was so much excitement that we were going to get a senior center, and somehow the work has stopped on that because of lack of funds. So I would really like to respectfully request that maybe that promise could be fulfilled before we're looking at spending $300 million on something else. Maybe the building that was bought and the senior center that was promised could get finished. I think that would be terrific.
Next.
Thank you. I have questions really that are about my education regarding pilots. So the first one is, I think I saw some numbers that said 26 to 31.
Just go back to the slide, please.
Yeah. Were those the estimated number of students that
yes,
would be
yes.
added? And why are those numbers different based on the type of housing? So it was different for market versus affordable. What makes the estimated
Sure.
number
So
of students different?
Rutgers has studied tens of thousands of units over decades, and they survey units not only by number of bedrooms, but by income level. And they estimate the amount of, or well, the survey tells them how many public school children are produced by, you know, as an example, studios produce a very small number of children, particularly expensive studios. Larger 3 bedrooms produce a much larger number of public school children. And that is their estimates. And they have done different studies over time, so we try to show a range because it's not so precise that it will be exactly 28 students or 25 or 31. We're trying to demonstrate the range that has been tested over tens of thousands of units throughout the state and in different regions and in different income types.
So it looks like the folks who can afford the market rate apartments are likely to have fewer children. Is it that they have fewer children going to the public school or fewer children overall? Because there is still an impact on the township from the number of children that would be in town, right?
Again, this is Rutgers
Right,
studying
that's
it,
what I'm
but
asking. Like, what's the
but
detail that you're
it's-
using
it's
for
mo-
this?
It's not my detail. This is what actually occurs.
Is this
based
your
on
report?
It's my report, but it's
Okay.
based on Rutgers
Right.
studies, but it is
Does the
probably a
Rutgers
little
study
of both.
say that this is the number of children who would live here or the number of children who would go to the public schools?
Go to the public schools.
Okay, thank you. And I think there are some pilots where the payments are based on gross revenue. This one seems to be net.
No, gross.
It's gross.
Yes.
Okay, I thought I saw net revenue in something here.
It was probably net revenue of the project on an unrelated slide. The pilot is based on gross revenue.
Okay, thank you. And for a project that I think you've said is expected to be very financially successful, what is the benefit of doing a pilot? Why subsidize a project that is expected to be financially successful?
Yeah, I said that the project, as projected, is not very financially successful. It is the pilot that makes it feasible, and the developer believes it will outperform that such that it will generate more than the lower level of feasibility and return.
But only if there's a pilot.
Correct. Conventional taxes would do more harm to
Thank
the
you.
Come on up.
Thank you. I don't want to face them because I want to ask the question to him. So, my name is Joanne Katzban. I've lived in the town for 40 years. My goal here is to see a development that benefits the current residents and taxpayers in town. So I reviewed this wonderful article that Matt Kadosh did for Montclair Local, and then the links to the proposal that the council apparently voted on in tentative approval at the last meeting. It was introduced, okay. So in that proposal, it says Exhibit 2 sets out the estimate of annual gross revenue. Exhibit 2 is not attached, it was blank. And that contains most of the information that's relevant to how the pilot's calculated in the different schedule of years 1 through 30, and what the potential payments in lieu of are, and what the adjusted, stage adjusted payments are. So you said, Susan, in your comment, get the facts. Well, I couldn't get the facts. They weren't attached. But that being the case, I have two questions. What is the rationale for the change in the staged adjustment? The stage adjustment set forth in section 4.2, whereby beginning in the 16th year, the option to pay becomes the greater of the service charge set forth in 4.1 or 20% of the taxes otherwise due, and then those increase periodically from year 16 to year 30. So is that because most of the units are going to be sold? This is a condominium development, the units will be sold, and so there will be not very much gross revenue, and so we're going to go to a 20% benefit. Also, as part of that, if a condo unit sells in year 11 to Ms. Smith, and then in year 17, Ms. Smith sells it to Mix Jones, is Mix Jones only going to pay a 20% tax assessment, whereas I will be paying 100% of my taxes?
There are no condos in the residential portion of this. These are rental units. So the statute defines how you should lay out the increment of otherwise applicable taxes. And the renters will pay whatever the prevailing market rent is, or the allowable, affordable, and workforce rents. And that gross revenue is then multiplied by the percentage of gross revenue in any particular year, and the town receives that.
So why is there a change in the payment schedule in year 16 and going forward, the potential?
That's the way the statute outlines that that we should go forward.
So it's set by state statute?
It is, there are guidelines. It is within the guidelines of the state statute.
Okay, all right, I've got a second question.
Yep.
And can you explain how the payment schedule for years 1 to 5 aids the developer? So if you look at year 1, the pilot is significantly less than the tax. It's not quite half what the tax. So I can see how he benefits in year 1. But after that, if you get to year 5, he's now paying $1.2 million more potentially in pilots than in taxes.
No, the developer is always paying less than conventional taxes. I think you may be looking at the municipal share of it.
Did you see it on the slide here? So again, can you turn to that slide?
I saw it in the article. So it says in year 1, well, that's you know what? I don't know where it came from. But it says,
Let's put it this way. If it ever exceeded conventional taxes, the developer would opt out.
Right, it did make sense.
It is not anticipated that it will ever exceed conventional taxes.
So these numbers, he's going to 1.79 million in third year, 1.9 million in the fifth year. That's the government share. So nothing shows us what the actual pilot paid by the developer is. That's the municipal share. So there's
I mean, it does show you. So
that is not on any of these things.
Okay, yeah. So the gross pilot is less than the conventional taxes in every year. That's why the program exists. It's, starts at 2 million where it would be 3.3. The first year is an important point. In a lease-up, to the extent the project is not fully leased or there are concessions to tenants, the developer is not paying because they're not collecting revenue. And that is a large assistance in causing a project to be financially feasible, because that becomes a carry cost that is in excess of revenue coming in many cases, and doesn't have to be financed and then amortized.
So where can I get those figures? Where do they appear? They're not attached to the proposal as it says, it's blank, Exhibit 2.
Yeah, I mean, there is an application that has a full pro forma. These are separately.
Okay, yeah, so where can I get that? Or where can everybody get
Can
that?
this be put on the website, Jen? So we'll put it on the website, it'll be there by tomorrow.
And they,
Under
this was
what?
an exhibit
How will I
in
find
the
it?
financial agreement, right? Was this an exhibit in the financial?
They won't be in the financial agreement.
Okay, so how can we get?
Please, I mean, if you post this.
Okay, great.
And also, Joanne, I just wanted to mention, somebody else brought up the point that you made about the document that's linked to
Right.
the article, and I checked, and you're right. If you go to the Township website and you look at the agenda for the February 10th meeting, there should be
It's
all
in
the
there?
appendices attached to the ordinance.
Okay. And I just want to make one comment, which is I feel very strongly that some of the pilots should go to the school district. I don't think there should be an exemption for this particular development. I just said I think part of the pilot should be dedicated to the school district instead of $0 going to the schools, which seems to be unusual. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Come on, Ken, you're up next, buddy.
Sure. Let me just stand up. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Tram. I've lived in Montclair for many years. I live in the 3rd Ward, and I've reviewed the... I would, it's stuck under the table here. I've reviewed the financial plan somewhat thoroughly, but maybe not having read it 8 or 9 times to fully understand it, but I do have a couple of questions. And I understand the balancing between getting a project that's good for the community, but also balancing against that the need to have revenue coming into the community. And one of my questions is, the way it's structured, is it, because it's in 4 phases, is it possible that the developer could enter into a master lease agreement with an affiliate and then have rental between the developer, between the master leasehold charging more to the tenants, and then the developer avoiding some of its payments because it would be getting less money from the master leasehold? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I have seen those structures, and that is not what is available. This is true gross revenue to tenants. It is not a master lease with an affiliated entity.
Well, when I read the documents, I believe that there's a provision in the various provisions in the financial covenant that gives the developer the ability to do that very same thing. It has that right. It's in section 8.1 and 8.3 of the financial agreement. They have a right to assign its interest, and it has a right to enter into master lease or sublease. And so, and the municipality can't stop it. Consent not to be unreasonably withheld is what the language says. So how does the municipality avoid the developer from doing that?
I mean, I would defer to our attorneys, but we would be able to withhold consent for a master lease that wasn't producing revenue that matched what the marketplace was.
Okay. I respectfully disagree. If you look at the language, it's an absolute right for them to do that. So
I just said it can't.
not to be unreasonably withheld, but that doesn't mean that they can't do it just because the revenue is going to be reduced. I think
So
the
can we
language,
have, excuse me, can we have Neil or Joe come up to address this?
I think the language in the agreement needs
We're
to be
gonna have our-
modified. Let me just, yeah, please come up, and I'll just have one other question about the same issue, similar issue. Since it's in 4 phases, what is, and gross revenue is the watchword for payment in lieu of taxes, what is to stop a developer from selling a portion of the project, such as the shopping center building, taking that the proceeds from that sale, which would then necessarily eliminate the revenue that's coming into the municipality.
It would not eliminate the revenue. It would, they can transfer and sell with our consent, not unreasonably result. But the revenue stream still exists, and we would still be paid based on the income going into the URE.
What you're saying is it's binding on a successor?
Correct.
Thank you. To address the question about the master lease, I'll read it along with you. They can master lease, but it provides that the master lease or sublease shall not constitute annual gross revenue for purposes of calculating the annual service charge. So the intention is that if for internal financing or business purposes a master lease is useful to them, they can do that, but they can't use it to reduce the amount of the pilot payment.
Okay, I'll reread the document.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, my name is Brian Anderson. Been in Montclair for 20 plus years. I have older students in our school system, but we are still very concerned about how this pilot will impact our public schools. First and foremost, we want to understand, my wife and I, what is the plan for public schools within this pilot? Will they receive any share of the revenues from it the same way we do with taxes? Or are taxpayers shouldering the burden of public schools on their own in a time when the costs are rising for public schools, in a time when the revenues for schools are dropping? It seems like a pilot that doesn't include a share of it for public schools is essentially starving those schools of revenue, while at the same time including costs for those new students in the pilot plan. I'd also like to understand, since we live on Grove Street and are serviced by this fire department, what are the plans for controlling traffic during the several years of this project being ongoing? We're talking about the corner of Grove and Bloomfield. That's a high traffic area at any point. But if you start redirecting traffic in that area, it's very narrow. And I've seen not very much information about the logistics of how we make that work, while again shouldering the burden of everything else being moved around in the wards. It seems like quite a bit. And then finally, I'd like to understand, my wife and I would like to understand if there's higher revenue generated than what's been listed here, does the pilot amount go up? Or is this just a benefit and a cash grab for the developer?
Excuse me. Mr. Harrison's going to address some
Well,
of your
well,
questions.
let Mike address the latter part of it.
Right.
It does in fact go up. If the developer does better, we do better. Every time they get $1, we get a percentage of that dollar. As stated with the schools are not impacted at all
Well, that's simply not true. I mean, one, there's more.
by the amount of revenue they can raise. When assessments go up, schools don't get more money, and when assessments go down, they don't get less. That is because we have gotten accustomed to describing our tax bill as a percentage of revenue raised. It causes a misunderstanding of the way schools are funded. Schools are funded by taking their budget and sending a bill to the municipality, which is paid 100%. So their revenue would not go up if this project did not have a pilot, and it would not go down if this project did. it would be exactly the same. And so there is no impact to their revenue stream by having a pilot in this project. And parking, what a professional.
Just in terms of, they will have to apply for site plan approval. During the site plan approval process, traffic issues, both after construction and during construction, will be addressed by the planning board. They will have to demonstrate, they'll have to do a traffic study, they'll have to show how the traffic's going to be impacted, what they're doing during construction, where the construction entrances are, how that's going to impact traffic, what traffic control measures are necessary, but that's all part of the site plan process. And just to follow up on the school question a little bit, the pilot is, one, the land taxes will be the same, so the money, which is about 85% of the current taxes on the property, that will, the school district will still get its share, whatever its share of the taxes is in a given year. The township, and this township's required, as Mr. Hanley said, to fully fund the school budget. The question of the impact is really one of what pocket it's coming out of, and this, with the pilot, it's coming out of the taxpayers' property pockets, not the pilot developer. The township has the ability, and for this project, we're talking about at least 2 years before we get $1 of pilot money to say, okay, we're going to dedicate X given the number of school students being generated. The first phase of this project is a supermarket, which is obviously not generating any students, so we're probably even more years off. But that's a decision for the township council to make. But part of this is school population's has declined significantly from pre-pandemic years. It's about 400 students less. So we're not actually increasing the school population at this point, but that could change 3-4 years from now when residents start moving in, and the council has the ability to look at that. I know of some towns that have provided pilot money to the school district. But bottom line, the school budget gets fully funded, period. There's no option there.
Just one follow-up question. So you mentioned that the schools will still get their share of the land taxes, and at least especially at the beginning, land taxes related to the property and to the store as it's being developed will continue to be paid. But what about the housing taxes for those property units that are developed after?
It's only the land tax that will continue to go to school. The improvements will get paid based on the pilot, not based on property tax rates. That, as Mr. Hanley said, is the whole point of the pilot, to give the developer surety. He can go to his lender and say, this is how much I'm going to pay, this is how much income I'm expecting. Income goes up, we get more, township gets more money, goes down, we get less. I think likely it'll go up, but it's a percentage of the gross revenue, and then it's a decision of the township council as to whether it wants existing taxpayers only to fund the schools, or whether it wants to take some of the pilot money, do that. But it's not a question of how much money the schools get. Whatever budget they adopt, that's what they get, regardless of if there are no pilots in town or 20 pilots in town.
Next guest, please. Sir, did you sign up for this?
Thanks. My name is Bill Barron, resident of the 4th Ward. I'm sorry, 2nd Ward. And I've been here 40 years, so been through a lot with the taxes and everything. When I moved here, we were paying under $5,000 for taxes. Now it's up around 20. The stuff you're saying about school districts, such a loadable, I'm sorry. The town doesn't pay the taxes, the taxpayers pay the taxes. We are assessed a separate amount for the schools. And what you're saying is that the people who live here, the people that own houses, are not going to see any benefit because the people who live in this development will not be paying anything towards the school district. So we have to assume all the costs of the school, and people and the commercial developments also will not be contributing to the schools. So we're on the hook, and I think that's wrong.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what you said.
No, I'll say what I said.
Okay.
What I said was that this is additional revenue that doesn't have to be raised by the taxpayer today. Right now, you have the full responsibility for the schools.
And we will
the
continue
full
to have,
responsibility for the municipal budget.
and we will continue to have that.
Correct.
And the people
Except
who move in will not, and the developer will not have any.
Do I
of
get the
that.
answer?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is additional revenue that doesn't have to come from you. You can continue to have the site as it is and not have the additional money, and then you carry all the burden. Or you can have the site redeveloped and have additional revenue. I have no opinion about that. That is a policy decision. But it is not true that your description is what I said. What I said is that this will generate new money, and that money will offset costs for you, the existing taxpayer. You don't have to do it, you don't have to like the development, but it is not anything but the way I just described.
I disagree. I think most of the taxpayers would disagree with that. I'm not opposed to the project. It's lain fallow, as you said, for more than 10 years. We want to see the site developed, and I'm not opposed to that. And I hope that, it doesn't continue to get delayed. But I have a lot of questions about, how this is going down. For example, all of these numbers that you're talking about are being generated by the developer. And we know enough about developers, and Playcheck may be a good philanthropist and a good person, but they play with their numbers. The audit, you said, is going to be done by the developer, not by the town.
So all of the numbers have been tested and reviewed. All of the numbers have been evaluated by myself and my firm, by Dragonfly, to check for reasonableness and whether they are appropriate in the marketplace.
But the revenues?
And the revenues will not be tested by the developer. They will be tested by a licensed CPA and produced in an audit as required by the statute. The developer will have to produce real numbers, and a licensed professional will have to produce an audit that says what they are.
An independent auditor or one being paid by the developer?
It's always paid by the developer, but they are licensed, and they will have to produce real reports and do all the testing the same way we require of public companies and anyone else that requires audits. Auditors have licenses, and we expect them to do the work they're legally required to do.
I'm sorry, I'm a little skeptical on that. Is 30 years required under the pilot laws?
No.
Yeah, so I don't see why we need to have a 30-year pilot. The developer is going to be selling these or renting these at market rates. The real estate market in Montclair will get whatever he wants. He can, I'm sure he will get his return on investment in 7, 15, whatever the normal return on investment is. And we shouldn't be on the hook for 30 years. Thank you.
First, I just want to say this is to Ms. Talley and the council members here. It would be nice for the consultants that we hire, for those of us who are paying for these consultants, to feel like they are representing the residents. So I've been in Montclair for 2 decades now, and during that time we have been told that we need development in order to defray our very high taxes, and that this development demands pilots. Not one of these projects since I've been here has been in a blighted area which pilots were intended for, but putting that aside, we now see what a lot of these pilots have done for our community. And right now, we have a $20 million deficit in our schools and a very bleak financial future there, a crumbling municipal building, a crumbling police building, a super tight municipal budget, and numerous tax increases over the time of these various pilots, with a potential huge tax hit coming up. I don't feel like this is going well. I like development that benefits me and my neighbors. I think development can be a wonderful thing. And I think Lackawanna Plaza represents one of the most exciting development opportunities that this town has had for decades and will have for decades. So first, we have the admission by the consultant that this is a high-risk project, and that was said at the last meeting, and I agree with that. I think the town made demands that make no sense, upping the risk to the developer, and I think the plan itself has a lot of issues that pose a high risk of failure. And the antidote proposed to high risk here, no matter what you attribute the causes to, is a minimum pilot that hurts the residents of the town. And this makes no sense whatsoever. The solution is a plan that works. Why should the public shoulder the risk and give a subsidy to the developer? That's what a pilot is. It's a subsidy, as someone said earlier. So I'm not getting a subsidy for my taxes. And I'm also not a gambler. Second, this plan has minimal public benefits. Ms. Talley, how many public benefits were listed in the last meeting? About a dozen, something like that? So one of them was a 2-block bike lane. That is not acceptable. Minimal public benefits equates to no pilot, to me. A myriad of public benefits, like municipal and police buildings, a daylighted brook with a surrounding public park, streets added for traffic calming, these are all public benefits I would consider a pilot for, because my tax dollars will be affected one way or another by these things. Or better yet, 2 to 3 pilots for different categories of the property that assess the risk of each of these kinds of elements. So a pilot makes sense when it's an investment in public infrastructure. Third, as I mentioned, our schools have a $20 million deficit. We have no ordinance on the books saying that any of the money from the pilot will go to the schools. So we're going from, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think approximately a 3.3% tax rate on property for me, to a 0.75% tax rate and no money to the schools for this project. I mean, at this moment in town, who would endorse this? It's financially irresponsible for this council to vote yes to this pilot, while we're being asked to save our schools with a tax increase, continue to pay for the $100 million bond that the schools passed a number of years ago, and our taxes keep going up. So I just implore the council and the mayor not to give a high-risk development this kind of a subsidy. It is not fair to the residents in town. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Hello, good evening, everyone. I would like to give honor to God and my late parents, Gerard and Mary Claremont. My late mother was one of the founders of Home Corps, and the two of them were a quiet force for the betterment of families in Montclair. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the Tenants Organization of Montclair. We are the group that brought rent control law to this still beautiful township in New Jersey. My name is Ahava Felicidad. You can just call me Ahava. Thank you to all the supportive Montclair clergy, and happy Black History Month. I'm pleased to see all of you here tonight, and I hope these meetings amass so much attendance that we need the MHS auditorium just to hold everyone. I am a 5-decade-plus native. I've seen decades of change in town and have refrained from being publicly verbal in this conversation about Lackawanna Plaza for more sentimental reasons. And now I have the opportunity to logically and compassionately support the statements being made tonight. So I'm co-signing without financial responsibility the recommendation and the requests made by the Montclair branch of the NAACP, Mr. William Scott, Housing Chair. Mr. Scott is also a Tenants Organization of Montclair leader and advisor. He sits on the Rent Control Board, among many other things in the township, and is thoughtful. For those watching from afar, I'm going to my paper, so please excuse me because I didn't expect to be here. I'm glad I made it. So for those watching from afar, the current Montclair Rent Control Ordinance was adopted in May of 2022. It provides renters the affordability to continue living in town. The rent increases currently are 2.5% for seniors 65 and older, and 4% for those younger. All provisions in the rent control ordinance will apply. You can find it on the Township of Montclair's website for those of you who have not read it yet. It's a good read. The rent, the exemption, and the high market rates. So the exemption that we're talking about for the recommendation has been a major contributor to the creation of hundreds of luxury apartments throughout New Jersey and locally right here in Montclair with high market rates, places such as Valley and Bloom and 2 South Willow, to name 2. The period of exemption from municipal rent control ordinances is 30 years from the completion of new residential construction where there's no initial mortgage loan. The request being made is that this exemption be waived for the 210 market rate housing units and 30 workforce homes. This will support future affordability for renters for the Lackawanna Plaza project. So this is a recommendation that is being made to the mayor and council of the Township of Montclair in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, an amendment that we're seeking for the Montclair Code, Chapter 65. In the end, for a new beginning, please check out the exemption bill, Assembly number 2236. I would like to thank you all for your consideration of this request and receiving the recommendation, and we do support everything that Mr. Scott presented earlier in his public comment. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, community members. My name is Jeffrey Robert Grayson, and I'm a 67-year lifelong resident of the 4th Ward in Montclair. My comment and question will be brief. This Lackawanna Plaza project is the single largest project ever proposed in Montclair. And it was mentioned that the town would benefit if the project performs up to the developer's expectations. So on the flip side of that, the town would be on the hook if it doesn't. And that could be very devastating in these current fiscal times. And I guess my question is, what in this developer's past shows that he can complete a project of this magnitude? And are there any things in his past that would raise red flags to suggest that he might not? Thank you.
Why doesn't that question get answered? Can we get an answer to that question? I don't know who would answer that. Can we get an answer to that question? Maybe Janice, can you answer the question? I don't know if there's someone in the firm. Can you demonstrate? Is there another site that we can? I can't. No, I'm not asking you to answer it. The questions of Mr. Grayson. Not you, Tony. I'm asking the person that supposedly represents us, if we can get an answer to Mr. Grayson's questions.
Is there anyone in this firm, this team, that can answer the question?
I mean,
Can we have?
is there a question about anything that's ever happened in his past? I mean, you can ask the developer. How could anyone know that?
How could you know? Well, we would hope that you said.
I'd like to just, I'd like to ask this next resident, please.
Can we get the question answered first, please?
I don't have the answer, but is the township on the hook if the project does not meet expectations?
The township will be paid based on the revenue stream of the project. So, what is the question?
Were you here, Mr. Grayson?
You want me to come back and repeat?
All right, yeah.
I have two questions. Is the township on the hook if the project does not meet expectations? That was Mr. Grayson's question, number one.
That was not the question.
And number two is, can the developer complete a project of this magnitude?
That was not the question either. It was, what other projects has he completed? How do you, Mr. Grayson, can repeat the question? This has been asked of the council and of you dozens of times in the last several years. It's never been answered. Thank you, Mr. Grayson. It was never answered.
Thank you.
It's on tape.
I'll repeat it verbatim. You mentioned that the town benefits if the project performs up to the developer's expectations. So on the flip side, the town would be on the hook if it doesn't, which could bankrupt Montclair in these perilous fiscal times. My question is, I didn't ask the question yet, okay? That's a comment. The question is, what in this developer's past shows that he can complete a project of this magnitude? And are there any red flags that suggest that he might not be able to?
You know, the developer owns the property and will either execute or won't. I have no answer on that.
That's not the answer. That's not the answer.
Bill's gonna answer. Councilor Harris is gonna take care of this one. Thank you.
As a non-elected person on the council, okay. Let's do this. The developer has done extensive work on the property on Erie Place that has been very successful in terms of how that property is developed. You know, so there is some experience in town with this developer on a property in town that was not in the best of shape and improving that. The part of the question, and tell me if I'm not answering, I mean, we don't know the future, but is if the developer does not complete the project, the township is still getting some, whatever the pilot will be, will just be getting less money from the project. The township is not going to lose money on the project. The worst case is the developer does not proceed and will be getting the same taxes on the property that we're currently getting. But if the developer builds part of the project, we end up with a supermarket and a parking deck, and that's all, we'll be getting limited revenue, but it is still going to be some revenue that's coming in. I can point, I've been involved in land use law for almost 50 years, and so there are very reputable developers that do not complete projects. They're relatively new developers who come in and do something. There's no guarantee, no matter what you do, as to whether the developer is going to succeed or not. The role the Township Council needs to play is to be extremely diligent. There are protections built into the financial agreement and the redevelopment agreement in terms of when the developer is required to do things. We have the ability to keep his feet to the fire to make sure he fulfills those obligations. But I can't sit here and tell you, I'm going to guarantee he's going to build the project, and 8 years from now there are going to be all these buildings and all the revenue that's projected. But it is the job of the Township Council to, at each step of the way, to make sure the developer is fulfilling his obligations.
Why couldn't they say that?
Because I'm the one who's dumb enough to open his mouth.
So,
Thank you, Councilor Harrison, I appreciate you.
what I wanted to say was when this council passed the resolution to designate the redeveloper, and this is on record, we did so based on an application that outlined a team of firms and individuals that would work on this project. So that was the rationale. As Councilor Harrison said, it is our job to do the due diligence at each step of the way. And as questions get raised, it's our job to make sure that we address them to the best of our ability. If this council decides that we're going to continue with this project and approve the redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement in whatever form they take, that is going to be a commitment, right? If we do proceed, that we want to be a partner in creating a successful development. So I think that's all I wanted to add to that.
Now we have new names that were just slipped to us at the last meeting.
Sorry, what do you mean?
New names on the project, new partners, new developers.
Okay, well, we can look into that. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
Here you go.
So clear.
Thank you. Okay, I forgot what I was going to say. No. I'm Tony Martin. I am a 30-year resident. I sit on the rent control board. I'm Tony Martin. I'm a 30-year resident. I sit on the rent control board in town. So my understanding of development of projects of these kind is that the driving force of the revenue stream is the housing. So if the project is going to do better in the developer's mind than the normal projections, that seems to me that that would entail the highest possible rents. I think that we need more housing in town. I don't think we need more super luxury housing. I know there is affordable housing in the project. However, the most units will be the market rate units. If we do not have any control, they will be set high and go higher and higher and higher. If, as the NAACP and the tenants organization proposes, We have a limit under the rent control ordinance. The rent control ordinance only caps the amount that rent can be raised each year. But if we're talking, I mean, you've seen some of the rents, people, in town, $5,000 for a two-bedroom. So we start there, and we have no cap over 30 years. I mean, yeah, right? We've got a great real estate market here. However, I don't think that this would be best for the town, because what we do want, right, is to keep a diverse community. And I don't see that happening. Thank you.
Martin Schwartz, multi-year resident. You'll have to forgive me, I'm a little under the weather. Multi-year resident, 4th Ward property owner. This is directed to Mr. Hanley and Ms. Talley. Some of the calculations that you've used for expenses, I believe, are skewed to seemingly support the project, which, if handled differently on their face, could show that it's just not economical. Let's start with municipal expenses. At the last meeting, Mr. Hanley, Eric D'Amato, Councilor D'Amato asked you for a real cost for those expenses, and we got a kind of rambling story without a real number, and then left with the impression that it was a per person amount. But in conversation with the former CFO, Ms. Rao, and confirmed with Mr. Marks here tonight, the actual cost per unit is $5,000 per unit for the average municipal expenses. Take $5,000, multiply it by 300 units, and you come up, I believe, with $1.5 million. Now let's move to the schools. Again, we got a story, something about incremental costs, the actual costs, the per head cost per student being kicked around everywhere for Montclair is approximately $30,000. And in years to come, it will be even higher. We can argue that from here to eternity, but those are the numbers being kicked. Some people say, well, the kids are already in the school, you don't need to add this, you don't need to add that. Nonsense. I've heard that for years. You could say that about any development. $30K per kid. Now let's take Ms. Talley's estimate. 21 kids, potentially 31 kids, using the Rutgers models, which were off significantly with Valley and Bloom. Valley and Bloom calculated based on the Rutgers models, and we had almost one kid. This is a couple of years ago, one kid per affordable unit. So even if we take the 31 top number, which I believe is still short, we could have 50, 60 kids if she's off. At 31 kids, that's $930,000. Add that on to the 1.5, you have a pilot that is not producing enough revenue to cover the costs. And therefore, I believe this is an uneconomical project. If it was done without a pilot, we'd be having a different story. But with a pilot, I don't believe it holds. That said, Mr. Hanley, you keep saying that we're a partner and that the developer is spending $300 million. Well, that $300 million is not going to Montclair residents. We're not necessarily gaining from that $300 million. Maybe restaurants are gaining from catering during the time the construction is going on, but there's no guarantee of hiring Montclair residents for jobs as part of this. There's no modeling for this. That $300 million that is being spent is being spent on construction. So that dangle that you keep doing really doesn't hold. We are not a partner in the project. And if the economics that I've just described, assuming Ms. Talley is right or wrong, it is too close to call. With a pilot, it's not economical. Lastly, I reviewed the language of 8.1 to 8.4, and with all due respect to the attorneys, there's all sorts of loopholes in there that a developer could slip in, transfer mortgage, debt, reduce rental. I read that language. It's loosey-goosey. I would urge a review of that again. We've been burned on just this kind of redevelopment language in the past. For Sienna, the development language said the developer didn't have to start paying pilot monies until every piece of commercial real estate was rented. Well, guess what? For years, a little sliver of the Sienna streetscape stayed unrented and undeveloped. Years. It took about 3-4 years until it was caught. So there are all sorts of loopholes because a developer is sitting there with a team reading through this agreement and giving language suggested that they can get over 20 ways to hell. We are looking at it from the standpoint of how we are benefiting and what we will gain. I urge that the town hire, as a consultant, a redeveloper for a day and look over this agreement and review where we could be getting burned. Attorneys are great, you need them, but a business person who does this all the time is necessary to avoid the township getting taken, as we have been in the past.
Anyone else?
I have one.
Okay. Please.
Hi, my name is Christina Anderson. I had my husband get up here before because I don't like to speak in public or to anyone. But I just want to say, something that you said to my husband about the school system and the number of kids and blah, blah, blah. We don't pay taxes based on how many students are in our house. I could choose to send my kids to private school next year. They're in the high school. They're not going to be in very long, I would still pay into the public school system in 4 years when I have no children in the school. And even if I had a choice, I would still pay into the public school system in 4 years because I believe in our schools. I believe that's why we moved to Montclair. We moved to Montclair 6 years before we had children because we had read about this wonderful town and all the diversity, and we were a young married couple thinking do we move to a town where everyone looks like me? Do we move to a town where everyone looks like him? How are our kids going to adjust? And we moved here for the beautiful diversity and community. And I just feel like that's getting lost with all these pilots. The last time I remember our schools not being in trouble financially is like 2017. I do remember a time when our schools were not in trouble financially. And I feel like then we started putting in all of these pilots and we're starving our school system. And I don't agree with you that the taxes magically disappear for those students or something. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I'm Linda Cranston. I've been a resident for about 36 years. I wanted to point out that I believe we all should be very concerned about having another pilot in town. The New Jersey State Controller's Office has been warning us for years to only use pilots and very sparingly. As Mr. Schwartz pointed out, they require very detailed agreements to try to close the loopholes because that's exactly why pilots are so popular with developers. There was a study in 2010 of the State Controller's Office that summarizes in New Jersey, municipalities, tens of millions of dollars of taxes have been lost to the pilot programs, as well as lowering the value of properties. It also requires, besides a diligent details in the agreement, to follow up to make sure that developers are actually following the agreements that have taken place. So I think it's obvious that it's very irresponsible, grossly irresponsible if the council decides on another pilot in this town.
Hi, I'm Sarah Avery. I'm living in Montclair almost 40 years now. And during that time, you know, there's things that have been sold to us, like the Montclair connection, and the redevelopment, and that the redevelopment was going to increase our ratables and increase our revenue. But the actual performance of pilots over this period has not produced those results because, as all residents know, their taxes keep going up. And furthermore, when we have the revaluation and reassessment, all of the projects that have pilots, they will not be impacted by the reassessment. And any increase in value in properties in the township will be shouldered by the residents. So you know, I have a schedule here. Hopefully I've included every property that has a pilot, but to the best of my knowledge, there are 8 properties in town that have pilots, right, stretching from the Alistair on Pine Street to the Valley and Bloom. And then there are 7 properties that have pilots that are for senior housing and low-income housing. And those, the abatements, right, that we're subsidizing account for about 41% of the abatement. So I'm characterizing the abatement as the difference between the pilot payment and what taxes would be payable based on a traditional real estate tax assessment. And over a, let's see, about a 7-year period where I did an analysis, those abatements were about $14 million, of which 60% was for the market rate units. And if you take 2 South Willow for an example of where a pilot was obviously not necessary, the pilots paid over the 3 years, 22, 23, 24, were $1.7 million less than if the property owner had paid a traditional real estate tax. That's $1.7 million. And then when they sold the property, they made $20 million on the sale. That's a 25% gain. So there is no reason to subsidize real estate development in the township of Montclair. You know, furthermore, I'm questioning these assumptions. Now, Mr. Hanley has claimed that, you know, professionals have looked at those assumptions and calculations, but none of the residents have seen those assumptions and calculations. And we know, based on real life experience, because we have lived it, pilots have not produced the result that was promised. And what's the proof? The proof is our school system is in the hole for $20 million. We're subsidizing Glen Ridge to the tune of $20 million. Our high school is falling apart. Our police station is falling apart. Our town hall is falling apart. The libraries are falling apart. If pilots had been successful, if we had received the benefit that we were promised, then there would be money to pay for the infrastructure that is falling apart.
Hi, I'm Charlie Spademan. I'm a Fourth Ward resident. I'm a renter. I don't know much about finance. I respect the voice of every person here. I think that the crowd here is biased towards people who have a problem with this, but generally on sort of on a granular level, thinking about one small part of the budget. Or I do wish that the whole issue with the schools was separated from this discussion, because that's not the way it works in Montclair, as has been explained. To answer your question, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I think, for a couple of years now, the developer has been the target of, target's not a fair word, but people have really, understandably questioned who this person is. And I would think by this time that somebody would have uncovered something if there was something to uncover. It's, it's not that hard to dig, and a lot of you have clearly dug into other parts of this. I find that frustrating, but I think that we can all agree that the property needs to be redeveloped. I think that we can agree that redevelopment, whatever that redevelopment looks like, is in the interest of Montclair. I'm not smart enough to know whether the pilot or taxing is the correct way to go, but I do know that doing nothing right now is bringing nothing to the town. And I really just wish, I've watched this for a long time, I'd just like to get on with it. And, I just, the developer is taking a huge risk. It's, it stands to lose a lot. The town does to some extent, but I think to make it more difficult for the developer to accomplish this is not in our best interest. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, so we're coming up on time. I think we're a little bit past. I wanted to, on behalf of myself and Councilor Toller, other councilors who are here listening, I wanted to thank everyone for coming out and everyone who is going to be watching and listening to the recording. This is a really complicated decision, as we all know. It's an extremely consequential project, and on a property that's been sitting vacant for decades, right? And not really serving the town to the extent that it could, and to the residents who live around there. And that being said, this kind of a financial arrangement has consequences. So I think I can assure you that I know that there have been some problematic developments. We all know this, and what I can assure you is that this council, I am very confident that every single member of this council is dedicated to asking all of the questions that we need to, getting the answers, and making the best possible decision that we can that will benefit our residents, taxpayers, and make something that will really be worthwhile in the long term. So I thank you for coming out. We listened to everything. We're going to take this back, and we'll move on with the next steps. Here you go.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If anyone needs, and just to clarify, it's been a decade, not decades. I just had to clear that up. If you need a parking pass to get out of the deck, please see me. If you want to stay for our next meeting, it's a double header tonight, folks, okay? Facilities and infrastructure is up next. You're welcome to hang out with us. Thank you for being here.